if any woman says anything today about how she does something to please a man, I think that is unaccepted in general by other women. Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd podcast. Today is a bittersweet day. This is actually going to be our last and final episode. So we want to really conclude everything. We're going to let you guys in on some ins and outs of the podcast and kind of explain why we're ending with today's session. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, bittersweet day. Why don't we get into sort of what has made us come to the conclusion of really making this our final episode?
With the cost of everything, I was hoping that we would get to a point where we would see upward mobility, after we've posted 55 long form videos, and it just hasn't happened. So at some point you have to kind of make a decision whether you're going to continue to invest money into a project that isn't, kind of paying the dividends. And my goal was never to make any money off of this. My goal was to get to the point where we could at least break even for all of our costs. Because otherwise it's just a really expensive hobby then.
Yeah, that's what I think should be emphasized, because this was really a passion project that you took on, and then I onboarded. You had actually started a different podcast first.
Yes.
Locally, and then that was for about, 5 or 6 months?
Yeah, we did. So that podcast, if anybody's interested, is called Break Stereotypes. And I really like that podcast. I had another female host who was a longtime friend of mine. I had gotten the idea from my practice as far as there was so many people that kind of came into a session that had a certain demographic. And I thought that, for example, that I would really like this person or I wouldn't like this person. And so, for example, if somebody was like a diehard Trump supporter or something, automatically in my mind, I was thinking, like, I'm probably not going to like them.
Yeah.
And they'd always surprise me.
Yeah, it's those stereotypes.
Yeah, that I think can be taken too far. And so what I tried to do is kind of find guests that definitely broke the stereotype. And so when we were thinking about episodes, we were thinking about, okay, like, who's going to break a stereotype when it comes to male dating advice? And it was you.
Yeah.
And the irony of all this is that Emily and I only live like 5 miles apart. And I had seen you on TikTok and followed you, and I was a fan, to be quite honest. But there was really no way of getting in contact with you. But luckily enough, my former podcast host knew your cousin.
Knew my cousin. Because your former podcast host tried to reach out to me through DMs, but I don't see my DMs really unless I'm already following you back.
Yeah.
And so, she then reached out to my cousin because you can see mutual friends. And she's like, wait a minute, I know her they went to school together. And then next thing you know, I was getting an email from my cousin.
Yeah. So that was like the power of networking. And so we got pretty lucky. And then you agreed to come on. And it was it was either our biggest or our second biggest podcast. And so then we had gotten to the place where it just really wasn't taking off at all. And it was something that I said, okay. And she was kind of thinking about moving. And we decided, like, who would be a good replacement? So the first thing was we decided to, kind of just see kind of who we knew. And it was actually her idea. She said, what about Emily King? Like, she was probably one of the coolest people we did. And if anything, anybody would probably want to partner with you if you're just talking about dating, she'd be the one. So I remember we invited you over to my house, and then we kind of did a sales pitch to you, right?
Yep.
And
you sold me.
And you said it sounds like it would be a good idea to kind of have that male perspective and a female perspective. Let's give it a shot. And I remember like after you left, I was like fist pumping because I was like, I got like Emily King, she was this great TikTok creator and, had these millions of followers and everything like that. And so
just the idea of this podcast alone, like having that male perspective and female perspective, I think is huge. And I think that's what's missing in the manosphere. Like, I really can't think of any other channels that mimic that. And, of course, that makes it more of a nuanced discussion many times. So sometimes that doesn't really necessarily bring in the views, compared to many other strategies, which would be to bring in the crazy side, and then have us as hosts be the ones that are just more sensible.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that's a dynamic that you see a lot in the manosphere, whether that's through bringing in guests that say crazy things or reacting to TikToks, reacting to other YouTube videos that are just really reactive. So this was very different, doing that kind of setup. And to have your background in psychology, in which, you had that real life experience treating patients, and a lot of male patients specifically, that like you saw struggling in the dating world. It's not just the stuff that you were seeing online. I think that was just a really healthy perspective. And I think for anyone like watching this today, if you've missed any episodes, like to really go back, because I think that there's some solid advice in every one of our 55 episodes.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's something that we both spent a lot of time researching and, in meeting and discussing our ideas and, trying to flush everything out. And so there was, a lot of research that went into it. But I think that you hit the nail on the head is that we are both pretty sensible people.
Yeah.
And I think we both kind of lean kind of more conservatively.
Yeah.
So when we look at these topics, we're speaking about them in a way that is very nuanced and I think very grounded compared to a lot of the content that's out there. But grounded, unfortunately, just doesn't sell well.
Unfortunately, that is how it is.
Yes. So I had to I decided that I was going to take a year off from my practice and focus on this. And I've gotten to the point where I've realized that, if we continue to do what we've done, we probably are going to get what we've gotten. And it's just not a financial situation that is going to be viable as far as, getting to the point of ever, kind of making back that money.
Yeah, that's something more like behind the scenes that no one really sees as a viewer on YouTube, is that a lot of creators that do end up building, it's for over years.
Yes.
And a lot of times, like, their videos end up being really poor quality to begin with, but it's, not necessarily about the quality. I guess it's more about the content itself. And then they just slowly build and then pour more money, as they grow. But if you're pouring money in from the start very early, it's that waiting period of over years, I think, becomes really limited.
Yeah, you just can't. It's just not doable.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of decision that I made. Is that would I be able to do that? Yes, but would that money be better spent on other things and people? And for me personally, that's why I decided to kind of go that direction. I've worked my whole life to get to the point where I'm financially stable. And so I've really never made any poor financial decisions in my whole life. And I don't want to start now.
Yeah, now's not the time to start.
Exactly.
So you're going to be going back to practice.
Yes.
And taking on patients.
Yes.
Pretty shortly here, in less than a month.
Yes.
So it'll be probably really just 2 or 3 weeks from when this airs.
Yeah. It's only going to be a couple weeks from when this airs, and I'm going to, take some time and do some fun things, and then, get back to kind of what I'm good at.
Yeah. So what our future holds is you're going to be seeing patients. I'm going to be having a baby. So my time will be limited in a short 5 months anyways. But, people can find me too creating still content on TikTok.
Yeah, of course.
And YouTube. So
yeah, I don't.
not that I'm completely gone.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if our viewers know, but Emily has her own YouTube channel as well.
I do.
That you just started up not that long ago.
Yeah.
And it's doing, really well.
Yeah.
For just starting up.
Growing.
For sure. And so if they still want to listen to Emily, that's where she'll be.
Yeah.
And of course on TikTok.
Talking in my bedroom.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
So talking about guests that we've had, we have had some interesting guests.
Yes.
And definitely some big creators.
Yeah.
It has been really cool to experience, first of all, especially with some of them being in person.
Yes.
I think that's been an awesome experience. And I think that it has looked very different too through the video camera to have people in person, compared to, I feel like, the typical through the Zoom meeting.
Yes.
With the sound quality not there and even the video quality not really being there. So who would you consider like one of our most memorable guests?
To me, the most memorable guest has to be Destiny.
I knew it. I was going to say the same thing.
And the reason that is to give a little bit of backstory is that, so Destiny had like no idea who we were. No. And even when you sent him an email, we went on his show first.
Yes.
And he was kind of like, because he streams every day, all day long for like 8 hours. He's like, I think we have some red pill people coming on. And so
he didn't know.
He had no idea who you were, whatever. But we were able to get Wheat Waffles to join us for that one. And so that ended up being something which was, for me, highly entertaining because I didn't expect them to go at it like that.
We were basically viewers ourselves.
Yes.
And they went at it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because like black pill versus blue pill, essentially. You could argue that Destiny
But
is
that
blue
wasn't
pill.
planned though.
No,
that was just
it
him.
wasn't.
Like that was Wheat Wolf just like coming at him hard from the time he got on. And it ended up being this very entertaining thing. But afterwards, I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, we really enjoyed being on your show. Thank you. Would you like to come on ours? And he said, yeah, sure. Why not? And which was kind of shocking to me because so we have to set the stage here. It's the middle of winter. He's down in Miami. We're in New York. And he is the worst communicator in the world. I love Destiny. I think his content is great. I don't think that he's got much of a clue about what's going on in the dating world right now. But as far as a content creator, I think he's amazing. And there's a reason he has, like 700,000 subscribers. But the fact that like we're these kind of nobodies in the YouTube world and he says yes, that was pretty amazing. And so I'm trying to coordinate everything with him as far as hotel, airfare, try to get the guy up here, make it comfortable for him. And he just completely does it on his own, doesn't talk to me about it. And he asked me, what's the address and what time to show up. Yeah. And
he showed up.
We had a snowstorm that day.
We did.
And so Emily and I were both running late.
Because we drive in from the suburbs.
Yeah, we drive from the suburbs and we film in the city.
Yeah.
And when we finally got here, he's sitting here, which was just kind of this surreal moment that he found his way. And, then it ended up being I thought a really fun conversation.
Yeah. Destiny is the opposite of flaky.
Oh my God.
And flaky is what is typical, I would say, in the content creation world. So I think that's just how his mind works. Like he says yes to something, he gets the date, he gets the time.
Yes.
And he's going to be there. Like he doesn't need the check-ins.
Yeah.
He just does it.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
he is so busy, I'm sure, that he just once he says yes, he just checks it off his list.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to be checked in on.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't need that. And he loves to travel. And even though it was the middle of winter, he was fine with doing that
Yeah.
because he wanted to see a new city and meet new people and, that type
Yeah.
of thing. But it was just like out of really the kindness of his own heart.
Yeah.
Because he didn't need, this is not going to really do anything for him at all, except for the fact of give him a new experience. But that was just really cool that there was a guy out there that has that, kind of clout that would be willing to kind of, go on here.
And he brought his typical energy too. So like all of that we were talking about was all behind the scenes.
Yes.
But actually, on camera for 2 hours, he absolutely brought his A game, I would say, and had a lot of interesting things to add. And we had a really interesting conversation with him.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he was great. And, he's just like a really good guy. And, like to this day, like I could contact him and he'd reply, So it's something that that was really, really a great experience for sure to have him on the show.
I think also Wheat Waffles was really memorable, especially with that being our first show. And again, he was in person at the studio. And I feel like with it being our first show, like we all had nerves. It was interesting. And he hadn't at that point showed his face very much. Like we were maybe the second or third time.
No, it was only the second time.
It was only the second time that he'd ever shown his face. Yeah, so like just that alone, I thought, like kind of brought up the energy and brought up the nerves a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool discussion too, because honestly, I was sitting there and hearing many terms and ideas that I hadn't been aware of. So I was like the newbie thrown into it.
Yeah.
So it was quite the learning experience for me as well.
The interesting thing is that I could definitely say I was nervous, and you're just saying that, but I don't think he was at all.
No.
No, I don't think he was nervous at all. I think he was completely calm, cool, collected.
Yeah.
But that just shows what kind of level he's at, that he's comfortable in being able to talk about these issues, and that his brain works in a way that is able just to spit out information like that. It's really a remarkable thing to see.
For sure.
But those are the two guests that really just kind of stand out for sure. And then when they kind of battled each other, that was just kind of the icing on the cake for me. But I would like to say honestly that all of our guests were really great, like for one way or another.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so even if you don't necessarily subscribe to their belief system, I thought they were at least entertaining and brought something that people could utilize.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talked about having like Kezia on, that she was so almost like motivating, that like anyone listening to her, any guy that's been struggling in the dating world that was listening to her talk, like it was very different talking to her compared to, standing back and maybe watching her videos and being cynical in any way. Like it's very different when you're talking in real life to somebody in real time, because it is, you can pick pieces of advice that are really solid pieces of advice, that she was giving.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought, for me personally, she was very funny.
Yeah,
and
she
entertaining, just with her, she's very blunt and to the point. And, and she, like one of the things that she said that really stands out to my mind is like, if you're a guy, like don't be an emotional tampon for a woman.
Oh my gosh.
I thought that was really funny. and she wasn't trying to be funny in that moment.
She was like so straight faced.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a good moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alexander Grace was, I almost think that he was great on our show, but it was almost too early for us. It was like, he was one of these guys that he's just so smart and dialed in with kind of what's going on that I wish we almost kind of had more experience prior to interviewing him.
Yeah, I totally can see that. Because it was like he gets deep. He really into the psychology.
Yes.
The evolutionary psychology, especially when it comes to male and female dynamics. So I do totally agree with that. And I feel like a lot of our base wasn't built up at that point.
Yes.
So a lot of people might have missed that episode. And it was such a great episode.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think. So, definitely Alexander Grace.
Yeah.
Definitely Destiny for different reasons, and Wheat Waffles. Those just kind of stand out for me. And but again, and this isn't virtue signaling. I do appreciate all the people that took their time to come here or to be on a Zoom chat with us so that we could get their insights, because I think it really brought value to the show.
Absolutely.
Versus just you and I talking.
Absolutely.
To get that third party perspective, especially that's different or disparate from each other.
Yeah, and I would say all of our guest interviews were some of the most highly viewed episodes. So when you're talking about like the most successful episodes,
except for the Passport Bros.
That one really took off.
Yeah.
And I think that it's because like it came from a very non-judgmental place and more of a solution.
Yes.
Like that is how that was talked about and presented by both of us.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially on TikTok, like the only thing that is ever talked about with Passport Bros, it's either a woman that is like putting a man down for having to be a passport bro, for having to go to a different country to find a woman. And there's way more to that. Like, she's throwing it out as an insult to him. But no man should really take it that way. It's really just more of a solution. If you don't have your situation working for you where you're at, like it's ridiculous to keep it going.
Yeah.
And it's better to change it up and do something that possibly will work for you.
Exactly. The interesting thing about that too is that, and we had discussed this off the air, but had you ever thought that there'd be a time period and that we would be giving advice for people to move to a third world country in order to get a woman? I mean, it blows my mind. But the reality is that unfortunately, that's how difficult the dating market is right now, that's a viable option. But it's just insane to me to think that would be something that we would ever have to speak about.
I know. It's the reality of today.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, going the opposite way, the least viewed episode is very clear on our feed.
Yes.
And that's the Harry and Meghan episode.
Yes.
And I think that it's because it's not relatable. I think that people, especially men, our audience is hearing Harry and Meghan and talking about royalty.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's just an automatic turnoff from that because it's not relatable to them.
I think that's definitely part of it. I think the other part of it is that it's just, British royalty. And I don't think that most Americans care about that at all. So, for example, our Matt Rife episode did really well. Emily's idea, by the way. And that was something that was kind of about somebody who was, a celebrity as well.
Right.
So I think it just had to do with the fact that I don't think most kind of Americans care about that drama. But I honestly thought that was a pretty decent episode. Like, we did our research and, we tried to kind of unpack it and figure out why they really got together and what was really going on, the reality of that. And so, I don't know, I'd like it to get to 1,000 views at least.
Yeah, so go watch that one.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to watch it, just play it through.
Yeah.
So I can feel better that we got 1,000 per video.
Views, yeah.
We're only like, I don't know, it was like 75 away. So it's close.
Yeah, it's really close.
But yeah, I think it was something that, you're right, people couldn't relate to, and I don't think people care about the situation that much.
Yeah, because I think that like most men sit back and they just know that women will sometimes go for a man because of his status, because of his money, and it's just kind of like a shoulder shrug at this point to them, but it doesn't help them knowing that. Like if they're not in that same situation,
exactly.
If they're not royalty, if they don't have money, how is that really helpful?
Yeah. It was kind of like our one like tabloid-ish
Yeah,
episode.
it was.
we were experimenting with different topics and
Yeah.
things. And so.
Well, the Olivia Wilde one did really pretty well too.
Yes.
When we were talking about her monkey branching. Because again, I think that is a relatable topic, I think, for almost any man, any status level, right? Like,
Yeah.
whether he's a medium status and she monkey branches to somebody of higher status, or, it also happens to guys that are the average guy, making minimum wage and
Yes.
whatnot. So I think in all cases of every type of man, that's relatable.
Yeah.
So that's probably why it did well.
Yeah. I think it also did well because it had Olivia Wilde on the thumbnail.
She's pretty.
and also she's famous, and I think we got a lot of our non-subscribers watching that video.
Yeah, I think that did happen where maybe they search barred Olivia Wilde, because that is when that whole drama was going on, where like her previous nanny had released text messages between the nanny and Jason that kind of revealed a little bit more. So
Yes.
people were search barring her more.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it probably did pop up for them.
Yeah. So those are people probably that watched that video and probably didn't come back.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are, the couple that have stood out as far as, just kind of you and I without guests, that have done decently well. And so, because, it's the thing I wish people could understand is that just how hard it is to get people to watch these videos. It's really, really, it's a tough game, because I have other therapist friends that have YouTube channels and they get like average of 5-10 views per video. And it's not like they're putting a lot of money into it, but these guys are, I know two of them, in fact, they're really smart guys and they have a lot of insight and they provide good content. But the problem is that, again, it's just the competition.
I think you need that perfect storm too. Like you have to be able to be really good on camera, and probably have the dynamic of like looking a certain way. I do think for a lot of creators, if they're good looking, especially dealing with TikTok, you're going to get more views. Actually, TikTok's interesting because it's either like one end of the spectrum. You're either really good looking or you're really not good looking. But if you're like average, the algorithm won't push you as much. So it's tough to have that combination. And you have to be well-spoken.
Yes.
So, you can be intelligent and you can know all of your stuff probably as a therapist.
Yeah.
But like, to pull it all together and to be well-spoken, to still be relatable enough, so that you're not like sounding super professional.
Yes.
Is probably very different than what somebody would be seeking in the actual like therapeutic atmosphere, where you're one-on-one.
Absolutely.
They would seek more of that professional tone.
Yes.
More so.
For sure. Well, and there's a big difference between having to create content and material and then present it versus being reactionary to somebody else's difficulties and being able to break that down. And that's just kind of how my brain has always worked, is that if you put a problem in front of me, I'm going to be able to kind of figure things out. But I always said that I never would have been like a great teacher because it's not something where I ever thought, because first of all, I'm a big introvert. And so that's one of the reasons why I do what I do as far as just kind of meeting with clients one-on-one or even, couples or, potentially some family work, but we're talking about small groups of people here. And it's very different to then say, okay, we've got this issue going on and let's try to figure out, kind of some solutions to it. Now you could argue that like the whole dating crisis, that's an issue. We've been trying to kind of respond to that, but to come up with specific solutions to a problem that's very complex and difficult, and then present it in a way that that people are really going to gravitate towards is challenging. Especially since, for me personally, I've never done anything like this in my life before. So it's
a little bit of a shock, especially in this kind of setting with multiple cameras, bright lights, having the headphones, having the
Yes.
big mics.
Yes.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to come across as intelligent and well-spoken
Yeah.
when you're having a lot of, kind of different things going on in your brain as
Yeah.
far as, kind of fighting the lights and,
I know.
that type of thing.
I
And
almost
so-
wish we could have like a compilation of bloopers
Oh,
all of
we
our
could.
moments, like the off-camera conversations too that I know Jeff has recorded pre-show,
Yeah.
and just like those moments. There's been some funny moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like where if we've like forgotten a word, like we're turning to Jeff. Jeff is like I don't know. He knows
Yeah.
what we're talking about. He'll yell it out after a minute or so.
Yes. Yeah.
Any like good funny moments that stand out to you specifically,
Good.
or embarrassing moments that looking back are funny?
Yeah. I mean, right there, just what I did. It's like, so when I get frustrated, I sigh.
Oh yeah.
And so that's something that when I watch back on the videos and you're asking me a difficult question, and so what's happening in my brain is I'm trying to process that and give you a highly intelligent answer. But if it's not coming right away, then that's where that sigh comes in.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think about that.
It's a filler almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's something that I wasn't able to realize that I was doing until I watched back. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's probably one of the more embarrassing. And people, in the comments a couple times called that out.
Oh yeah.
And so, which I'm well aware of.
I think my filler that I started noticing when I would edit, and I never say this phrase on my TikTok, which is really interesting to me, but I say, I think that, like, that's my filler. It's as the wheels are turning. Well, I think that, and then I caught myself also using like, which just took me back to high school. I'm like, oh my God, I got to stop using that.
Yeah.
But I would edit it out. So I don't think many of our viewers realize how much I was saying like.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had probably so many ums and likes, and there's a lot of different fillers that I use this for sure as well. And so that's just not something that you're going to see, like if you have a normal conversation with me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's something that I know that you can improve on. And I think that if you look back at our first episode versus now, I think you've been pretty consistent, Emily. I'll say that. But I think I've seen improvement in myself.
For sure.
I like to think so anyways.
I for sure have seen a lot of
So,
improvement.
yeah, I remember, so we did this, actually not really a funny moment, but an embarrassing moment, but we did a whole podcast on the friend zone.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that you couldn't even use it.
No, I think that was the first one in which it was just two of us.
Yes.
Yeah. It was. It just was unusable.
Yeah, exactly. But it just goes to show you how actually difficult it is.
Yeah.
The way I compare it is that it's when you're watching YouTube and you're watching a creator who's done really well and is, very popular for some reason. It's kind of like if you're watching a movie or something and you're watching a great thespian and you're saying, you know what, I could do that. Or you're watching an athlete and you say, I could have caught that ball.
They make it look easy.
They make it look easy because they're so good at it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that don't ever knock something until you try it. Because everything is more difficult than it seems. Because what you're watching when it comes to content or athletics or anything that takes talent, you're seeing like the top 1%.
I have so much respect for any newscaster after doing this. Like, they're live typically talking. And I know, like, one moment stands out in my head in which it was the intro, I think. It was either the intro or the ending on one of our episodes in which, like, I usually say the same sort of line. And I got tongue twisted. And both you and Jeff just look at me and there's like a little pause. And Jeff's like, You want to try that again? And like newscasters that are live, like they don't have that.
Yeah.
You know?
And even though they have teleprompters, it's still tough because you have all the lights, you're live, and you have to make sure that every word is going to come out clear.
Right. And there's still like the sentence formation. You know, you need to sound like you are ending the sentence at that period.
Yes.
Or else it can get jumbled and sound really odd.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the banter in between.
Yeah.
So it's something that, I really haven't thought about because I typically, honestly, don't really watch the news much anymore. But it's something that, see, there's another thing. It's something that's my thinking.
Oh, yeah, that is yours.
Yeah. That is very difficult as well. So just, I think, keep that in mind. I think when you're watching creators, that it's something that they're really, really good at. And so it's easy to be critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm never going to be critical on somebody's YouTube video again. And if they do a good job, I'm going to let them know it because I realize how much work and time and effort and, oftentimes money, comes into things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to know, like, after all this time that we spent on the podcast and through these episodes and speaking to different types of people, different guests that we've had, do you think your advice to men is different today compared to the advice that you would have given a year ago, even before starting this?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I thought about, here's the sigh again, that when we were planning this, that I've learned so much about kind of what's going on in the current dating market that I genuinely feel embarrassed about some of the advice that I gave to guys that I worked with prior to this. So when I start working with guys again, I'm going to have so much more insight. I mean, this was probably the greatest continuing education that I could have done for my practice in helping men by actually doing this podcast, speaking to the guests, working with you, doing the research, all of this type of thing. Because, I think a lot of times what happens, as we get older is we don't realize how much the world is just changing because we're kind of stuck in the time period that, we were kind of on the dating scene, for example, and things have changed so much. But what I learned is that these topics that we've talked about, they're all backed up with data and research. So it's not just, so for example, like it really is terrible to be on dating apps. But what's interesting though, is that I think that guys should use that as a tool.
Right. But not like rely on it.
Not rely on it completely, for sure. So that's the thing. But I think, for example, having a dating profile that goes to the point that women do as far as getting a professional photographer, using the best angles, lighting, filters, even if you have to, making sure it's almost perfect. Like that's the only way you're going to, and actually for people who are interested, Wheat Waffles on his second channel just did an experiment where he posted his Tinder results based upon him getting the best photos possible. And he ended up actually doing pretty well. And this is for a normie guy. So the thing that I really loved about that video is that it said that if you are doing all the right things, that there is hope involved. So he started off with this big pool, and then it ended up whittling down to a small one. There was a lot of flakes involved, and people didn't return messages and things like that. But he was able to, in a week, schedule 9 dates.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he was working hard though. Like thousands of swipes to get to that point.
Okay, yeah, but I think like the average guy hearing that, even if they got like one, if they whittled down to one, that would be seen as better than what they've been getting.
Exactly.
But I think that's so true. Like the advice to just, if you're going to do it, to actually put effort into it, because if not, I feel like that's just a hit to your self-confidence. If you're not putting your best foot forward,
Yes.
and then you're not getting any matches, or the matches that you end up getting, they fall through, they flake, they don't turn into anything. I think that's just a hit against you then.
Yeah, I think it is, but here's the difference. I think if you go into it understanding that the odds are stacked against you from day one, you don't take it personally.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, because it's not so much like what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's like it's more of a mindset of this is just how it is for guys right now on dating apps.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's just the reality. So I think if your mindset is, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it well, but at the same time, I'm not going to put all of my stock into that one area. That's just something that is just, one of the things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And trying to incorporate into kind of creating a better dating life for myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I would say is, get on all the apps, but just have rock solid profiles and, spend that money to get that professional photos, figure out how to use, some of the filters involved, do all those things. And I think that if you're an average guy, I think that you can get some matches out of that. Now, whether that's somebody that's going to be relationship material or not, who knows? But the point is that it's putting yourself out there and not throwing in the towel.
Yeah. It's something that's actionable too, which I think that guys take very well.
Yes.
Compared to the advice of, well, just keep doing what you're doing and it'll happen when it's meant to happen. She'll pop up into your life out of nowhere when you least expect it. And I think one of my favorite episodes that we ended up doing was about men's mental health, in which, you really talked about from a psychology point of view of like what you learned in school versus more of, what you learned in practice. And how men really do need something a little bit different from their therapist compared to what is taught in school.
Yes.
And that's something that like I just never really thought of, but it totally makes sense that guys are more action driven. Like they want solutions.
Yes.
Because that's how they are even in like arguments or anything like within the dynamics of a male-female relationship.
Yeah.
It's that like a woman wants to talk about it, but then a man wants something to actually do about it.
Yeah. These words, honestly, that I'm about to say have never come out of my mouth when I'm talking with a male. And that is, how does that make you feel? Because
oh my gosh.
If I ask them that, they're going to look at me like I have three heads, So what I'll say is, what can we figure out and what can we do about this? And then you can see their eyes kind of light up. That okay, now we're going to get into the mud and try to figure out what's the best solution for whatever given issue is going on. Where with women, it's very different. I ask, how do you feel about that? Very often. And I would just let them speak. And that would be very therapeutic for them. And then, just kind of give some feedback as necessary. But yeah, that was a key question. And I think that if there's guys out there that are looking for therapists, it's kind of having that same message we gave before. Is either try to find someone who's male and tell or if you can't find one and find a female therapist, tell them that you want to be solution oriented. That's
great advice, I think.
And if they're not with that, then that's not a good fit for you.
Yeah. Do you see that happen often where like people will pick one therapist and even when it's not a good fit, they'll end up staying because they're afraid of switching? And what would you recommend in that case?
Yeah, I think that you can, that tends to happen.
Yeah.
But if it's not working for you, I think you just got to, it's just like any other relationship. You just got to end it.
Yeah.
Cut your losses and, try to find somebody else. That would be a good time to monkey branch.
That's the only good time.
Yeah, that and jobs,
True.
would be to try somebody else out and then see if it was a better fit and then, and that relationship, if that's the way that things go. And sometimes, guys just do want to kind of vent. But on the most part, I would say that when guys walk in my office, they want to sit down with me and they want to strategize about whatever's going on and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like my strengths are, because I'm an objective outsider and I can pull from my experiences, but also look at their individual situation and, try to figure out things from there. And the other thing that a lot of people, a friend of mine was just asking me this the other day, was, are all of the guys that you ever worked with, like, they're all struggling in the dating market? And the reality is that no, there was a lot of guys that I worked with that, we're kind of these top tier guys, but we're struggling with different things. So I think, we've gotten into this place too where, and I can say, well, I'll say I'm guilty of it. It's kind of looking like those guys don't have any problems. But the reality is that, so for example, if you are one of these top tier guys and your strategy right now is just to get as many hookups as possible, like, that's going to affect your mental health eventually. That's why I'm so pro relationship.
Yeah.
Because it's just not healthy for either party to be involved in that. And then it creates this terrible gender dynamic and things like that.
Did you see that happening with some of those guys then that were your
A couple,
patients?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can totally see that in today's world. Like, we've talked about how, Gen Z is just fine with
These are millennials too.
Millennials too.
Like guys in their late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. That should really, that's usually in the 30s, at least, when you're really seeking more of a relationship dynamic. But I am shocked. Like, I've thought more about how people are okay with more of that casual dating situation these days. And now, like, anytime I hear about, like, a friend's kid or younger people that I know, like, they really are in these casual situations, and it blows my mind. But ever since, like, hearing about it more, like, I'm seeing it. Like, one of my best friends, she has kids actually in their 20s. And she just told me, like, her son, who's 23, has never had a girlfriend. Like, he's had relations. And I assumed that it was through a girlfriend. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's never had a girlfriend. And he's, like, an attractive, tall, fit guy that has a full-time job. I'm like, there's no reason why.
Yeah.
But he actually, for his own situation, he actually does want more of that relationship dynamic, but he can't find a girl that wants it, which also blows my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's happening out there.
Yeah, I really feel bad for Gen Z.
Yeah.
Because I think it's for the average guy and even millennials, it's something that it's just really, really tough for them. Where me as an average guy myself, when I was younger, it wasn't much of an issue. And so my strategy always was kind of, I wanted a relationship, but in between the relationships, if I met somebody, I would have hookups.
Yeah.
And the thing is that in this day and age, the younger version of myself wouldn't be able to pull off what I did in the 90s and early 2000s. Do you know what I mean? Because things have changed so much.
I know, because it would be hard for you to even find those relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was all that before online dating.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah. So it just goes to show, like, how much the times have shifted.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, though, even within the times that we're in, my advice to men is, if you want a relationship, to not necessarily participate in the hookup culture, at least, like, try to find really what you're seeking. If you already know inside that that's what you want. Yeah. And I think for long-term commitment, I think you'll be better off.
Yes. The difficult thing, this is what the difficult thing for me is that, so if I had a relationship, let's say it lasted a year or two, and then it ended, oftentimes even the same dynamics that were occurring today were occurring then, as far as if a woman wanted to get into a relationship, it was pretty easy for her. But for a guy, it took some time. So in the meantime, though, I had a lot of opportunities with women who I didn't see as relationship material. And so but I'm still a man. I still had a high sex drive, and it was something that was really difficult to turn down.
Yeah.
During those times, even though I knew that this wasn't going to be my person.
Because it like took less effort, you're saying?
Yeah, well, it
And,
didn't
like,
take much effort at all. And also it was something that I knew would hold me over until I did meet, that person. Because it wasn't like if I was hooking up with somebody on a regular basis that I was stopped looking for a relationship
Yeah.
simultaneously. And it wasn't like I was being deceitful to these women.
Yeah.
I was just, they were, pretty much okay with it.
Right.
Maybe in the back of their mind, they were thinking potentially they could try to lock me down or something like that, but they never came out and said anything.
That's kind of on them then, if they didn't communicate that expectation.
Yeah, that's one thing I feel proud about myself is that I've never like intentionally misled anybody when it came to that. I've always been kind of a relationship guy, but relationships are tough to find, and they were back then too because there's so many different things that go into actually having a relationship.
Well, there's less need to mislead, especially today, that many guys can just be open and honest that they want short term. And there are plenty of women that want that also, so there's less need, I would say, compared to like 50 years ago, especially.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak about that a long time ago. But I mean, the other thing, honestly, I have seen is that the quality of women, I hate to use that word quality, but has significantly kind of gone down.
I know you've talked about that before, and you think that's like mostly surrounding this whole obesity crisis.
I think
Do you think?
I think it's the obesity crisis, but it's about not even trying to work on that at this point. And for me personally, kind of being more of a kind of conservative type as far as like, I think it's really difficult for women to, pull off like the green haired look, and the septum ring and the body full of tattoos and things like that, which seems to be very common and just kind of giving off those masculine type features.
It's the whole mindset shift that I've seen for women, because if any woman says anything today about how she does something to please a man, I think that is unaccepted in general by other women. But if you do something completely for yourself, whether it's the green hair or the piercings or the tattoos, I mean, that's all physical stuff, but it still counts, then it's seen as a good thing by all other women. And I see it just entwined even in relationships, like how we were talking about how guys really want to be solution-based. There's so much content out there for guys to consume that are women and other guys saying, men, you need to just listen to her. She doesn't want solutions. She just wants you to listen. She just wants you to vent. Okay, that's great. Like, that's great information. Guys should learn that because that is how women work. But I just don't see the opposite for men, right? I don't see content creators out there saying, women, this is what men need. Like, it's just not, it's not accepted. It's right now, today's day and age is about women and women empowerment. And it's slid so far in one direction that you can pick out almost anything that's a relationship dynamic, and it's just heavily biased right now for the women's benefit.
Yeah. And this is almost kind of women's comeuppance because, looking back, in my youth, you would oftentimes see very average guys with bombshells or even like kind of lower tiered guys with kind of like normie women, where now I'm seeing this all the time, especially in the gym. I've counted like 5 or 6 couples that the guy is significant higher SMV than the woman. And it's almost like it blows your mind because like you'll see this really tall, built, attractive guy with this woman who's like clearly like very overweight, for example. And that never used to happen. But there was a time period where it was the exact opposite. So I think that's part of the whole process as well, is that, and this is where your optimism comes in, where I'm hoping you're right, that eventually it'll kind of
get back to center. It's gonna
that it will,
shift.
that'll be that way.
Yeah.
So, because I think in order for that to happen, though, there's got to be enough men that drop out.
Yeah. And I mean, that might happen, with men, a group of men going their own way, and then
Or passport
bros. Yeah. Just
Or
leaving the country.
Yeah. And I think the MGTOW movement, that's going to be the thing potentially that eventually I think women are going to say, okay, wait a second, this isn't working. I'm not able to find someone because the guys just aren't there. And then maybe it'll gravitate towards more the middle, because that's kind of where we need to be. Because if you look at the history of how dating was, women were very dependent upon men. So they settled. And that's not a good way to go. You want, if I had a daughter, I would want my daughter to be independent, to have the ability to take care of herself, but then find someone that was a good complement to her life. Not someone that she needed to depend upon, because you know what? That's a recipe for abuse.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's a very valid point.
So, but I think what's happened is that it's gone so far, so fast, that women are just really dominating and doing so well in school. And I do believe that overall women are hypergamous, so they're just not finding guys that they're attracted to. Overall, not just talking about their looks,
right?
As far as kind of everything that they bring to the table.
I definitely agree that expectations are super high right now for these women. That feel like they have it all themselves. They're very attractive themselves. They're high earners. Their status is pretty good in this world today. What's too bad really is that they don't realize, if they want a family, that's like the greatest expectation, right? Is to have that. And it's not all about getting the best of the best man. Once you have a family, it's not even your kids are going to be perfect. Where do you stop the expectations? Because nothing's perfect, and you really can't set those crazy expectations and truly get what's rewarding in life.
Do you think, though, that's the garden variety common woman's, or do you think that's more just on social media? Because you'll see all these women go on these podcasts and they will say that the guy needs to make six figures, which is like this tiny percentage. They need to be, it's all those sixes type deal.
I think that is the extreme. I don't think that is the average woman out there right now. But I do think that overall women, and I guess you could argue men, but I think mostly women are a little bit more self-centered and selfish. And that's why there's not as many families being created, because it does really take that selflessness and ability to compromise and communicate to form that type of relationship and to even want kids. So, we've seen and we've talked about the huge decline in childbearing right now. And I just read an article I found at my dentist's office yesterday. And I don't remember the stats offhand, but it was emphasizing the huge drop in women, actually bearing children through their 20s. I think it was 20% right now decline since 2010. Yeah. Which is huge. And I really think that that's centered around just women deciding for themselves that they don't want kids because they don't think that they'll be able to provide, or they don't think that they're going to be, a good mom, or they just don't want to. They would rather have the energy put towards themselves. Yeah. And I know personally a lot of women that have decided that from a young age, that they just don't want kids. Yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of those women are going to regret that decision later on down the line.
That's what I wonder. I mean, you hear about celebrities like Hilary Swank. She just had twins at the age of 48.
Wow.
I think. Yeah, and people were, of course, going after her, for being that age. And bearing twins on top of it. It's a very high risk thing. But absolutely that happens to a lot of people that are high earners, very successful in their career, and they feel like they can't stop the momentum. Yes. And so then they wait till past their 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, because the expectation thing was never there until there was kind of that equality that emerged. because on the flip side, it's like men's expectations have gone through the floor right now. Really.
Yeah.
So, and even if they're brought up, it's something where then they're just chastised, like the Matt Rife episode we did.
Yeah.
Like there was a legitimate campaign to try to cancel this guy because he had preferences. When it's just, to me, blows my mind, because that's all women talk about on these social media platforms is their preferences.
Exactly. And his were like pretty broad, you know, like they
He
were
even said he
physical
likes
features.
MILFs,
Yeah.
and so,
There's a lot of women out there.
But there was all kinds of women who were saying, don't talk about my body.
Yeah.
Right? But how many guys who are short, for example? Because those are the guys that I really feel bad for. Because in the past, that honestly probably wouldn't have been that much of a deal. But now, because of the height filters and just this expectation, that guys who are short, they have a really, really tough time of it. And so it's so funny to me that a 5'3" woman would expect to be with a 6'2" guy.
Right.
Versus just having a guy who's 5'7" or something like that, like who's 4 inches taller than her.
Yeah.
But that's not good enough.
I know. It's those expectations. And I think, they get some of that just from wanting to look good, on social media, or just they have it in their head. They have it kind of drilled in, I think, in their subconscious that is high status to them.
Yes.
That it's not maybe so much about how much the guy earns, but it's, he has to be this tall, earn at least this much.
Well, that's the part of the woman's comeuppance, because, if you think about history, typically guys, that's all they cared about was the looks piece, right? I think this has always been it within women, but they just weren't able to execute it before. And now they're executing it, but it's gone to the extreme.
Yeah.
Because guys were never that bad. They would at least find their looks match.
Yeah.
But women now, and this is because of the dating apps, they're able to kind of hook up with these guys, but they're not able to get relationships from them. And they have a hard time going back.
Yeah. I think like overall for guys that are out there dating, I think the type of woman that has been like cycling relationships, like I think that's a red flag. Like I feel like those are the women that are on again, off again in these different relationships. And then they get like pickier and pickier each time. That's when they're creating a list. Like no 18-year-old girl is really creating a super long detailed list because they just haven't gone through experiences and they haven't lived and they haven't found out what they like or dislike yet. So that goes to why men a lot of times I think do like younger, right? Because it's like, they're just less picky, I guess, and not in like a bad way. Like, they're not bringing their standards down in any way. Like their standards are still there. They just don't have these crazy, silly, I would say, expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that younger women also are just kind of less jaded because they've, maybe not gone through a lot of, breakups or having been divorced or whatever it is. And so, but I think that there's, I don't know, there's maybe some red pill, maybe myths we can kind of talk about. Like the first one, I think that and I kind of get where it comes from, but I think it's overblown, is the whole single mom thing. I really is, because it's something that I think it's really a situation dependent.
It is. And I think just any woman that has been divorced, I think it is situational.
Yeah.
Because usually, like, I'm one, obviously, to defend single moms.
Yeah, of course.
With being one. But I just saw a TikTok that I responded to recently, and it's a woman that has like a whole account for like after divorce recovery. And she put out a video saying that she decided to leave a good man, but it was just because she didn't feel the spark anymore.
Oh, geez.
And come to find out, because now I've seen more of her videos popping up, that was her second marriage.
Wow.
And I just do think that like, in those kinds of situations, again, situation dependent, and the next man comes through and he's looking at her to date her. She's very attractive. She doesn't look like she's even over 35. But to know that like she was with a good man, but nothing significant happened to justify ending a marriage. And it was just that, she just wasn't happy with him anymore. Like, I just feel like chances are you're going to be the third one that she's going to divorce.
Very good.
If you're going to go down that path.
Yeah, very good point.
It's a terrible mindset to have. It's different if something has happened in a relationship in which there was a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Like, I think in those cases, it's pretty clear. But, if you're talking and you find out that this woman has divorced, especially the father of her children.
Yes. That's a big deal.
And especially if she's young still, and she's just decided she wasn't happy or she lost herself, that means that the commitment wasn't there. The loyalty was not really there.
Yeah.
Because there's always ups and downs in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that spark is going to dissipate.
Yes.
That's been proven scientifically that it can only last 7 years. And that's a lot of times.
7 years.
7 to 9 years is when most marriages end. And it's right around that time. But to me, that's honestly when the real kind of quote unquote love begins. Because then you're building somebody with a partner and it's not about the love chemicals. So
Totally.
So I think it's really about saying, like, if you want to form a partnership, it's because of that you're essentially, if either marrying or in a long-term situation with somebody who's your best friend, as cheesy as that sounds.
Yeah.
That you really like their company, enjoy talking with them. It's not because there's a big difference between lust and love.
Yes, it is. And so I think that when the red pill talks about single moms or women that have been divorced, like, I get where it's coming from. I really do.
Sure.
Because men's greatest fear in, dedicating themselves to somebody long term in a marriage is that she's just going to decide she's done, and decide to leave, and without really trying to make it work.
Exactly.
And that is very scary. So, like, I get it. If she has possibly a history of doing that, why you would want to avoid her.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's not all cases.
It's not all cases. Well, I mean, how many people in our comments say, I have a crush on Emily, type of deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get simped over on your comments on TikTok all the time, and you're a single mom. And that, you're an example of somebody that would make a great partner. And, you found a great man in your life. And, obviously you're having another child with this man.
Yep.
So it's something that for him that really worked out well for.
Right.
And so, and I know that everybody could say that you're an anomaly, but
Right.
I think the reality is that there are good women out there that have had children that it just hasn't worked out for one reason or another, not because of the fact that they just got bored.
Right. Exactly.
So it's kind of looking for those. The other one I really want to talk about, which I think is really important, and I might get blowback on this, but at this point I don't care, right? Is showing emotions to women. And so what the red pill teaches is that you need to be stoic at all times. You can't show any type of emotion. God forbid you cry in front of a woman. And here's my thing, is that if you do that and that's held against you, you're with the wrong woman.
Yeah, it's not you, it's her.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Because I think a mature woman is going to say, this guy's a human being. He has emotions. Something really difficult happened. Something really, traumatic happened to this guy. And I want to be there for him just like he'd be there for me. And so the red pill teaches that, like, you can never do this because the woman's going to walk away. Well, if that's the case, then she's not ready for a relationship.
Yeah, you need to do it and just let her walk away. I mean, as a man, if you never cry in front of your woman, like, you're never going to be vulnerable to that extent, then your relationship is only going to be surface level.
Yes.
To a degree. You are not going to get to the greatest depths.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're kind of signing up for it to be a failure at some point anyways, I would argue.
Yes. Well, it's not going to be very fulfilling if you feel like you always have to be this stoic guy. And I think there's a big difference between being somebody who's kind of a soy boy, or however you want to say it, and you're crying all the time, at anything that goes wrong, and you never let that go, versus, generally speaking, being a strong, healthy guy. But again, we're human, and there's going to be situations that we lose somebody, for example. Like at this point in my life, I've pretty much lost my entire family. And each time it was really, really difficult. And I was, lucky most of the time to have good women in my life that supported that. But I think that's something that guys have to really think this through and say to themselves, okay, you know what? Yes, I think overall, you being in control of your emotions versus your emotions being in control of you is the healthy way to go. But there's going to be times when your emotions overwhelm you because of a specific situation.
Absolutely. And we've talked about before how, like, for me, I think it's a problem if a man that I've been in a relationship with for more than a year, like if I've never seen him get emotional at any point, I think that once that man does get emotional in front of me, I really feel like, okay, we're there. Like now I can see that he's able to be vulnerable with me. Like we can progress the relationship even further. And that's going to be the type of woman that like you need.
Yes.
Because you can't live your life as a man, like just holding it all in.
Yes.
I know I used to know somebody who he said his dad, like he never saw a cry in his entire life. And this guy is in his 20s, right? Has never seen his dad cry. He lost his dog, like during the time that he was a coworker, lost his dog who was, his dad loved the dog. And his dad went out for a walk like shortly after and just spent like 2 hours out there. Like, and everyone knew in the family that the dad was just finally getting his emotions out. But to like feel like you have to do that without anyone around you, and he had to hold it in all together.
Yeah, exactly.
Until he had the opportunity to get by himself. Like that's a rough way to go for your entire life.
Yes, exactly.
So
I think that's a good litmus test if you're with somebody that, obviously you want it to be genuine, but at the same time, like have that mindset that I need someone who I'm going to be comfortable, who's not going to judge me or look at me differently because I'm vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
And there's good women out there because, I know them that if you did something like that, they would be okay with that. And, and they would see you as a fully formed human.
Yeah.
Not as someone who's weak.
Yes. Yeah. I think it also depends on the woman, because I think that some of these red pill channels, like they will have women, a type of woman on saying that, oh yeah, my boyfriend cried in front of me and then I just couldn't look at him the same way, and I kind of lost all feelings for him. I don't think that is the majority of women. I think that's the minority, but you're hearing them.
Yes.
Because it's, that's a crazy thing to say and to listen to as a man. So, of course, those episodes get a lot of views. So then you see it even more being put out there.
Yes.
I think overall, like my advice to guys when it comes to listening to content in the manosphere is just to be cautious, with the content creators that you follow and understand when it's entertainment versus real advice.
Yes.
And really like understanding if it's reality or not.
Yes.
Because if it's more for entertainment, it's probably not a demonstration of the average woman or average man or relationship dynamic.
Exactly.
So just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and look at it as entertainment and don't, buy into people who, may speak really well, but at the same time their message is off. So.
Or that bring up a very important issue that's completely valid, like we've talked about with Andrew Tate, but he has horrible solutions.
Yes.
Unhealthy solutions.
Yes. And there's a lot of Andrew Tate wannabes out there. And that's where I say stay away from that. That's why, for dating and relationship advice, I would honestly say that Alexander Grace is the best creator on YouTube for that. He's got so many videos, and he dives, like you could type in the most obscure subject because he's been doing it for so long, and he'll have a great video as far as in order to deal with that. And he's really big into like having masculine frame, but he's also big into, for example, like being vulnerable with the right person type of deal. So, and the irony with him is that he's really not that well known, even though he's got a decent subscriber base. But he's someone like, stay away from, I would say, like the Fresh and Fits of the world and the Andrew Tates of the world, and go towards more Alexander Graces of the world.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think that's great advice.
And and this is like a normie guy too.
Yeah.
So it's not someone who is kind of like this superpower because he's like dating's really easy for him. This is a guy who's been in a relationship for a long period of time, has a child now, and kind of went through all those different stages. First, kind of with the PUA culture, then the red pill, and now just kind of doing his own thing.
And he's more mature.
Yes,
he's older than some of these other creators.
Yeah, he's only in his mid-30s, ironically, but he's just brilliant as far as his advice. And I've learned so much from him. He's probably like the single best channel, I would say, for guys out there to not only try to attract women, but also for relationships with women. I think he's just amazing. So, and the other stuff, if you watch it, like all the reaction videos and things like that, then just understand it's entertainment, and understand that that that's not all women, because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll try to pick the worst case scenarios out there, and then they'll just explode on that. And yes, we are in a very trying time, for men, probably the worst time in history.
Yeah.
In, I don't know, maybe written history anyways, that is as far as, trying to kind of get that relationship. So it's so important that you don't add to the problem by by just villainizing women.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of channels out there where women are doing the same to men, but men probably are not coming across it as much, especially on YouTube. But it's just as unhealthy. That's why there's a big group of women that see men as all terrible. And good men, most men, I would argue, are good men, end up getting a bad rap just from that. So don't do the same to women either, because it's just not a good mindset to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're getting down there, Todd.
Yeah, we're getting down there.
I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? We're going to tell everyone, where they can still find us. And we're going to link them up with how potentially they could get into contact with you if they want any kind of like individual therapy. But
yeah, I don't think there's anything we really missed.
All right. So if anyone watching, anyone in our audience wants to connect with you, well, tell us a little bit about like what you're looking to do and how they could potentially link up with you.
Yeah. So, I didn't spend all this money so I could grift at the end of it.
I know, right?
But at the same time, I have gotten some comments that have said, that they wish Todd could be my therapist, and you can. So what I would recommend is I'm going to link my email in the description, and I'm going to select a small percentage of clients that I will take on, that I can do sessions via the phone. Because the one thing we spoke right before the podcast, we just want to know, is there anybody who is watching that actually lives in upstate New York?
Yeah.
And if they are, comment that. And if they wanted to see me in person, that would be possible. If they live in our area, in the Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse area. But if anybody would like to get a consultation with me, you can email me and give me a description of kind of what's going on for you personally. I'll kind of look at it, and I'll get back to the emails, and potentially we can set something up. And so the reason I want it to be kind of a small group of people is because I really believe that therapy works better in person. And so I'm going to be dedicating most of my time to working with people that are kind of in the area that I can either reconnect with or, form new connections as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
But if anybody's interested or, they just want to, say hello and give some feedback, I'd love to hear from it.
Awesome. I think in the description also we're going to include maybe some of our other team members' contacts too. Because like what you were saying at the start of the podcast, we do have a really awesome videographer.
Yes.
And production manager. So
we'll link all those people. So for example, if you need any editing done or any videography done, or if you do live in this area and you want a great studio, like we've got one for you. And the guy who does our thumbnails, our graphic designer, is great. He really does great work. I'm sure most of the people who are watching this can say to themselves that they've seen our
the
thumbnails, and they look really good.
Yeah, so, and the logo and everything. That's like placed on the video.
Exactly.
It was all done by him.
Yes. So, but it was something where he also sat down with us and tried to figure out what the podcast was about.
Yeah.
So we really worked, and you specifically, more hand in hand with him as far as, kind of finding what would be the best thumbnails and things like that. So if anybody is interested, we'll have his link below. I'm not even sure if he's looking for that much business at this point, but at least, it will be out there.
Yeah. We'll see if he wants to be included, if he's looking for more clients. And then it'll be down below. And
then we'll also, I know you've linked on your page, your TikTok, but you can I don't know if you've been putting the YouTube on there recently.
Yeah, I will if I haven't been, but pretty much across all platforms. You guys can find me at Emily W. King. If you search bar that, you'll find me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the last thing I really want to say is that I want to thank all the people that have been watching our videos and supporting us, because it has meant a lot, especially the people who took the time to comment. That and I tried to get back to most of the comments, and I will continue to do so while I'm building up my practice. So if you guys have any questions or just want to talk in general about something, I'm going to try to, because we've had some really well-written, long comments.
Very long. That's what I love about YouTube comments compared to TikTok, because it's not really limited in how much they can say. And I think that a lot of them have been thorough, well thought, and kind of has made me think, just hearing a different perspective.
Yeah.
Or, telling me that they agree on this part, but not necessarily that part. It's just that other perspective.
Yes.
And they've obviously taken a lot of time, to write a thorough comment. And so I absolutely appreciate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And those comments sometimes honestly were heartbreaking as well.
Yeah.
Because guys kind of broke down their story. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of guys out there that are struggling right now. And, I'd recommend them getting as much support as possible. I think the other thing, which I think hopefully we can have a resurgence in, is men's groups. I think those are really positive as far as, getting a group of guys together and being able to kind of talk about some of the struggles that they have in a non-judgmental way. I think guys do really well in that. So, that's something for my practice I'm going to try to come up with as well, as far as, putting some of these groups together. I
love that idea. I love that. Yeah, because, there's so many men out there right now that are struggling to even form friendships.
Exactly.
To have, men that can also relate to them.
Yeah, so it's kind of creating that third space in a way. And I know when guys get together, especially, like I've said probably 100 times on this podcast about like being in the sauna, but if guys are in that place where they feel comfortable and they trust each other, they will open up about, pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what guys need right now, is that support, not to kind of be that stoic loner, but really to try to figure out where can I find other guys that I can talk with and strategize with as well. Because it's, there's a lot of different factors that are involved as far as, age demographics, where you live, all those other things. But if guys are able to kind of get together and game plan, and they're able to then, potentially utilize each other for business contacts and things like that as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think that it's obvious, Todd, that you are very passionate with helping guys out. And I think it's wonderful, that you're returning back and seeing men one-on-one, and just your ideas, listening to them right now of developing those group settings, I think is awesome. I think it just demonstrates, that you really care. You could potentially probably just go and travel, for the rest of your life and hang out and still be comfortable at this point. Like a lot of guys could potentially retire, at this point. But you did a passion project for over a year, running these 2 podcasts, one after another. And I think that says a lot. And I just want to say that I have really appreciated, my time with you and the discussions that we've had and the content that we've created.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that. That's really kind words. And, I want to say the same thing back to you, that it's been an honor to work with you and a privilege, to be quite honest. And that's something that I didn't see coming. And, we, generally speaking, have worked really well together. And that's something that it's hard to do, especially, with kind of that male-female dynamic.
Yeah.
But I think we were able to pull it off. And it's just a shame that we didn't get the kind of viewership that we really needed to continue this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of you. And, and I really wanted to, thank you for coming on and tell guys, if they're not already following you or watching your podcast, you put out some really good stuff, and you're one of the few women out there that I really believe do care about men's mental health and their situations, and that it's not just, something that, you're trying to take advantage of a situation. Because I think there are women out there that are doing that, but you're not one of them. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't really believe that.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. We'll put those things in the description if you'd like to reach out or follow any one of us individually. And we'll see you later.